I will introduce the session. This afternoon, we're going to be talking about the Virginia-based mapping program, specifically the Imagery program, and we have our program manager for that, Wendy Stout, on the line to review what we've done so far with the project, and also to show the viewer that Fugro, who is our partner in this, has developed to aid localities in the review of the imagery. So with that, a final reminder to please mute your phones. I will turn it over to Wendy. Wendy, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it. I also would like to thank Melissa Parsons. She's the regional coordinator for the Roanoke area, and she set up this webinar with the technical aspects, and I appreciate all her hard work in getting me prepared to be able to present today. I want to give you a little bit of information about the co-presenter that I have today is Mike Warenow. He's the program manager for Fugro Geospatial, and he'll be giving you a demonstration later on in the program to show with the Fugro Access software and to help you so that you can utilize that yourself. And so I look forward to sharing that and Mike sharing as well. As many of you know, Fugro won the contract for the Virginia-based mapping program for 2017 to 2020, and we are very excited at the point that we are now. We are almost ready to start acquisition flights, hopefully as soon as next week. And one of the new tools that Fugro brings to the table in this new contract is a web application called Fugro Access. This will provide both project tracking and QC review tools. It will be available to the localities, to the PSAP and GIS managers, and any other interested partners. Like I said, we'll share with you later in the presentation about how to access this tool. It's available for you to try out and play with now, as well as we also have a user manual available that I'll share with you on how to access that as well. Today during the webinar, Mike and I will share with you the three main components of the Fugro tool and explain why it will be useful to you. We'll also share with you some common QC edit calls. I know that once you start using the tool, you'll want to know, according to VITA standards, what is an acceptable in the imagery and what is actually a defect. And we'll share with you some common examples of that so that you'll know what to look for. And we'll also discuss the Ortho production workflow and give you a little understanding and background about how the Ortho production process works and what the procedures that Fugro and Beacon will go through to get the Ortho ready for you to use. Finally, Mike will share the demo on the Fugro Access software, and I think that'll be the most exciting part of the webinar. Okay, so taking a look, and I think somebody may not have muted there, so if you just joined the call, Steve gave instructions at the beginning to please mute your phones and so that it'll minimize background noise as well. What you see here is the map of the area of the 2017 flight. So the Fugro Access tool will be of special interest to PSAP and GIS managers of localities that are being flown in 2017. And as you can see by this map, there's quite a bit of coverage on the east for upgrade areas. The blue area on the map shows the 1-foot base imagery that's not being upgraded this time. The green areas indicate the areas of 6-inch upgrade, and the pink areas are 3-inch imagery acquisition. We normally start flying from south to north, and hopefully we begin flights in the next week or so, weather permitting. That's always a factor. So you can see that we have quite a bit of upgrade 6-inch this time around, so it'd be great quality for our products this time. Okay, the main thing that we wanted to discuss today is the Fugro Access tool that you all will be able to utilize. And some information about that, the Fugro Access is a web application that allows users to be engaged in project tracking and to be interactive with the quality control process. A lot of times, locality partners will ask me to let them know when they're going to be flown or if their flight was completed. And there's so many factors, such as weather and cloud cover, sun angle, that affect the flight schedule. So a lot of times we have adjustments from the original flight planning, and those sometimes are on the fly, the morning of, when those changes occur. So it's hard for me to be able to give advance notice to localities to tell them when they're going to be flown and when they're not, and if they were actually flown. So this tool is very helpful and will be very beneficial to you starting in the next 2 weeks. For instance, if a lot of times we have situations where we might be able to collect in Powhatan because there's clear skies there, but in New Kent, it may be cloudy and not good for flight conditions. So this tool will allow you to be able to go in and check to see if your locality was flown or not. The project tracking component reviews specific flight lines and status information, and it tracks the changes, so it'll be very beneficial. The second component of the Fugro Access is the multi-user QC review. We have many different localities purchasing upgrades, as well as our base customers. They're all anxious to get a look at the imagery. And so this allows the raw unprocessed data, it will be available for viewing within about 10 days of the flight. It really streamlines and expedites the process of getting customers access to take a look at the first data once it comes off the plane. Last flight season, if a customer wanted to see the unprojected raw data, I would have to wait for the vendor to send me a copy. I have to make a copy on the drive and mail it to the customer. This is a much more efficient procedure, and it gives all the customers the option of taking a sneak peek at the imagery. Remember, when you use this multi-user QC review component, that this data is before any projection, processing, or color corrections have been made. It is raw data, so it will have defects. This is simply to give you access to look at the data and see what's been flown very quickly after the flight. The final component of Fugro Access is a web-based quality control review tool, and sorry about that. Users are able to review the process and color balance imagery and participate in an interactive QC process. You can review the project boundaries, the individual tiles, and important areas in the QC process along the seam lines, and you can look at areas that you have an interest in and flag an area of concern with a polygon and even make comments about what you find. So it's going to be very beneficial and exciting, something that we've never had available to us. And so I hope that all of you will take advantage of that. So let's take a look. What you see here is the project tracking capability. And currently, Fugro and I are working on finalizing the flight line for the 2017 acquisition. And hopefully, I'm thinking next week, and of course, Mike might correct me later, but according to our schedule, we should have flight lines uploaded into Fugro Access as early as next week or the week following, showing you our plans. And as I stated earlier, those plans are subject to change rapidly. So, as you can see here, the flight lines are color-coded. Around the flight lines, you'll notice a purple project step there. And then also, you'll notice a yellow line around, which is the project boundary. And that's so you see the box, and then you see the outline of the boundary there in yellow. The blue flight lines indicate that the imagery was collected but not reviewed yet, and the green lines will indicate that flight data was accepted and that the area will not have to be reflown. So it was a successful flight. So when you're looking at this, you will see a legend that will show you the different colors of the flight lines and what they mean. The previous slide did not show any orange flight lines. And orange flight lines, as you can see on the legend, show that it was uncollected. It has not been collected yet. When Mike and I put Virginia's data on Fugro Access, you will mostly see orange because none of it's been flown yet. And then it will slowly turn, to green or to blue and then to green. Farther along in the process, in a few months, you'll see tile stats, this part where it says tile. That will become important because you'll be looking for production to see that the tiles in your area are in production instead of the brownness is not started, and then you'll be able to see when they change the or finishing or ready for review, which means that they are complete and ready for the final QC process. Okay. As I mentioned previously, one of the great benefits of this web service is to be able to view the raw unprocessed data. Within 10 days after the flight, the raw data should be accessible on Fugro Access. But please keep in mind that this data is not the final product. It will contain defects. All this is simply a look at the imagery as it looks straight off the camera, straight off the plane. So it's just to view. At this point, you would not be flagging QC concerns because we have not done QC process through Fugro and our external vendor. Once the processing has occurred and all the QC process has gone through, then the real fun begins. This is when the participant can look at the data that has been processed. It's been color balanced. It's been through at least some quality control. The data will look very similar to the final delivery that the locality will receive. For instance, if Newport News wanted to look at the Highway 64 expansion project in the imagery, the GIS manager could pull up the tiles, look at that area of interest, and review the data. And if, for instance, the PSAP manager found a wavy spot on the road, he could flag it and draw a polygon around it right up. As you can see, this is an example of a polygon that's been drawn around a building that has a defect. And then immediately this would put this on my radar, on Fugro's radar, and we would start looking at that area to see if the defect needs to be corrected. The imagery goes through a very rigorous quality control process. We have a warranty process, so hopefully there won't be many edit calls that you'll find in the data. But I really do encourage you to take a look. This tool is a really good way for you to be interactive with the process, and nobody knows your data like you do. So, I do encourage you to look at areas that might be areas of concern and participate. We really are excited that we're giving you that option this time. Okay, to help you know what to look for when you're reviewing the data, I'd like to share with you what is truly a defect and what would pass our acceptance criteria. And we'll break from the PowerPoint for just a moment and pull up the VITA and acceptance criteria so you can take a look at that. 1 second. Okay. All right. I hope everybody can see that okay. This acceptance criteria is how I define whether or not a defect needs to be corrected or whether it is within our acceptance criteria. Fugro and our external QC vendor also use this document as the baseline for all QC calls, and it is, the final authority on whether something is actually a defect or not. So as you're looking through this, and I'm just going to scroll through, notice the types of defects that we look for in the QC of the imagery, things like artifacts, blemishes, smears, wavy features, and all of these are defined. For instance, a wavy feature should not deviate from its path by more than 5 pixels. So, there is a definition there that's clearly defined. And also we have in here aerial triangulation acceptance criteria as well as ground control acceptance criteria. I'll be glad to share this document with anyone who's interested. Just let me know, and I'll be glad to send you a copy. So take a look. Let's get back to the PowerPoint and take a look at common QC call issues that we find in the imagery to give you kind of an idea of what you would see and whether or not it would fall into our acceptable or not acceptable criteria. Artifacts are very typical. They're a typical edit call. You'll notice the glare from the sunlight and the glare on the metal roof, these 2 images. These types of glare generally are acceptable, but what is not acceptable is a roof that has a brightness ratio that's so high that it gives it a washed out appearance and it kind of obscures the features of the structure. That would not be acceptable. Another type of edit call issue is turbulence. Turbulence is very common on the planes during flight. This is very obvious defect that shows up in the imagery as a bright color that obviously does not belong in the imagery, and I don't know how well you can see this on my screen, but I'll run my cursor over the instance of that here, and then on this one you can see the bright green and pink lines across the imagery. These are examples of turbulence in the imagery that you would find as a defect, and that would be a QC call that you'd want to let us know about. Another type, or several other types, occasionally because of spikes in elevation data or excessive topographic relief, an anomaly or artifact that can best be described as an image smear will appear on a rectified image. Basically what this means is the steepness of the terrain is such that some ground image is effectively hidden from view. This could be, it probably won't happen in 2017 as much as it would in the western half of the state. It's sometimes the backside of a mountain or the sides of a steep cliff. It can be called smears. Also, wavy features, imagery should not contain any warped features. Distinct linear ground features such as roads and curbs should not deviate from their path, as we find that in the imagery frequently as well. You may see that on a road or a railroad. Clouds and cloud shadows, flying conditions, flight direction and time should be such that photos only have tolerable cloud cover and have sufficient contrast and features of interest. The QC process ensures that no clouds or cloud shadows obscure the imagery. Most of our project areas collected when the sun is 40 degrees or more. We require 30. So shadows shouldn't end up being so dark that they obscure imagery content. In areas with tall trees or significant urban development and with taller buildings, the photography should be acquired such that the sun angle creates a minimum shadow, and that's really what creates the shadows is the sun angle most of the time. All right, other issues, smoke and haze will sometimes show up in imagery. Also, these can obscure features in the ortho imagery, and when that occurs, that would be an edit call that would need to be corrected. One that has been more of an issue in the past, but because of the new camera system that we have this time, the push broom sensor, it will probably not be as much of an issue because we won't have as many seam lines. But ortho imagery is inspected to ensure that the mosaic lines in buildings and above ground transportation structures are avoided to the greatest extent that's practical. As you can notice up here in the top image, an example of that, and then here you can see that it's corrected in the imagery beside it. So you can see that line right there, that's the seam line where the imagery is connected. Horizontal displacement along seam lines and tile boundaries is not permitted among across our acceptance criteria, so it's very important to us to have seamless imagery. So imagery is inspected for completeness to ensure that no gaps or image misplacement exist within or between adjacent images. We look for feature misalignments along seam lines and along individual tiles to make sure that we have complete coverage. Just, especially in the area of transportation features, these types of issues, seam line issues, really should not be in our imagery. So we definitely want to know about it if you see those. Okay, and of course in our urban areas, we have issues with building lean. Many times it will obscure features. So bridges, overpasses, and tall buildings should really have minimal lean. They shouldn't extend over roadways, sidewalks, or parking lots. In the case of a tall building, the lean might obscure ground features. So the impact of building lean is really most critical in the urban areas where you see a lot of tall buildings in a concentrated area. And the QC process helps to ensure that ortho rectification removes the issue and the imagery is free from significant building lean. So that's something that our urban customers will probably take note of. So lastly, we have radiometry and color discoloration. Note the color differences in the two images. slight systematic radiometric differences may exist between adjacent and ortho imagery tiles, tiles that are beside each other. And this occurs mostly because it capture dates from the sun angles along the flight lines, and can be observed in the image's lightness or darkness when you look at the comparative tiles. So, with that in mind, the ortho imagery should have an accessible tone of balance across the entire project area. They're checked visually. We look for tonal balance so that they can produce uniform contrast and tone across the entire project. Colors and changes in color balance should be gradual, they should be minimal, and there should never be abrupt tonal variations between tiles. You can kind of see with the arrows examples of that in the pictures here. So we take that pretty seriously, and we'll be looking closely at that. So a little bit of information about how we would, a brief discussion on the methodology on how we would address some of these issues and how the production process occurs. So starting with the radiometry, since I was just discussing that, we at Vision will review samples with Fugro and select a radiometric solution for the imagery. If any of our locality customers want to participate in this process, we do form a committee, a small committee, to review the radiometry, and we would encourage you to participate if you have a strong interest in that. Tonal balance correction is performed over a group of images during the mosaicing process, and we lighten or darken the adjacent images for better color tone matching. And then this radiometrically balanced imagery is re-imported into the system and applied to the full imagery. And that's the way process that we'll use to define the radiometric plan for the ortho. And again, we'd love to have your participation if you have an interest in this. Other factors about the methodology that Fugro will use, one of the really exciting things about the new contract is that Fugro will create a new ortho digital elevation model. And this is a deliverable that's suitable for ortho generation. And I have a typo spelling arrow in this, and I see it. I know everybody else sees it too. I'm not sure how that happened. But what I was going to say is that the digital elevation model is created from 1 to 5 meter digital elevation models, and Fugro uses a backward forward and nadir pan-chromatic channel to generate the autocorrelated digital surface model. The digital surface model is not the final product. It is a reflective surface of above ground features, including buildings, trees, and vegetation. But then the analyst will filter the digital surface model to an ortho quality digital elevation model. The digital elevation model, or DEM, is a raster that represents the ground elevation above sea level, but the trees, the buildings, and other features, those are not included in the elevation values for the DEM. Also, break lines, which is typical for digital elevation models, are not part of the DEM either. This is going to be a deliverable that all the localities will receive, and it is an exciting step forward in really making our ortho product to the best quality possible. And it will hopefully eliminate any potential for shifts or other issues of that nature from the surface. Okay, another technical detail about the ortho imagery production. Once the digital elevation model has been compiled, offsets are measured to confirm that the offset falls within the accuracy for the project. The auto-generated seam lines undergo a manual inspection to prevent any kind of splitting of ground features. And then a final mosaic undergoes another round of inspection. It's packaged to the final projection and tile layout metadata and uploaded to the Fugro Access for you to start your QC review as locality for participation before we send it out to the customers. So the metadata, I just mentioned that in the previous slide. Fugro will develop and deliver metadata for each geotip and them and the production of the Ortho photos. And the metadata includes important information about the Ortho imagery. This is compliant metadata that fully describes the compilation and quality and accuracy. It's checked, and VBMP metadata includes how accurate and recent the Ortho imagery is, the use and sharing restrictions, and important processes in the imagery life cycle, such as the compression and mosaic, and all of that will be included. So that concludes the portion of background information about the process of the Ortho imagery. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mike and from Fugro, and he will give you a demonstration of the Fugro Access tool so that you can see how to utilize it as well. So let me see if I can turn this over to Mike. Okay, and bear with me for just a second as I change this over. Here we go. Okay, Mike, I'm making you the presenter.
Thanks, Wendy. Appreciate the overview there. Excellent job describing all the various components of Fugro Access. At Fugro here, we're very excited to share this tool with everyone. It's a tool that's been in use. Originally started off with our just for internal project status, but now we offer it to our customers as well. So look forward to you guys having access to this. What I'm going to do here is you'll see this is the login page for Fugro Access. I'm going to log in with what I call an online QC user credential. And this gives you the ability to basically view project information, everything that Wendy just talked about, look at tiles, make edits, but there are other functionality that could potentially be hidden depending on what your user status is. So for this presentation, I'm just going to go over and give you the main components of Fugro Access, and then potentially we're going to follow up with a part 2 of this webinar where we can go into additional detail about actually making QC calls when we figured we'd do that once we actually had actual imagery from your state, from the Commonwealth, up on the site. So let me log in here. Okay, so just take a moment to load all the details. And what this is going to do right now, for this user has access to really 2 projects. And what we're going to do for Virginia is we'll create 3 separate projects for the site organized by resolution. So we'll have a project for the 12-inch product. We'll have a project for the 6-inch, and we'll also have one for those municipalities and counties that are getting 3-inch. So we call this our home page. And again, what it does is just list the projects you have access to. You can go in here, you can search by project. You can also just kind of come over here and just click on the project name, and that's going to present another window which shows you've got two main components here. The project tracker, which we'll go over that first, which shows the flight lines and the tile status, and then the online QC component where we actually load in the finished Ortho product. It can go in there and review the Ortho imagery. So I'm going to click on Project Tracker. I'll just take a moment to load. And again, this is similar, exact same screenshot that Wendy just showed, but she went over the different statuses for each component. You have Flightline Status. You've got tile status. What I'm going to do here is when the site first opens up, it does not present the legend. So there's a toolbar up here where you can turn that legend on. And if you hover over each icon, you'll get a little tooltip text basically letting you know what the name of the tool is. So I'm going to open the legend. And, if anybody's familiar with any standard GIS, we pretty much mimic that functionality here where you've got a little toggle switch here. So when the default, every single layer is turned on. So for here, we can turn features off, turn them off, turn the tiles off, the block labels, everything can just be shut down in this manner. You have options in there if you want to adjust the opacity of the layer. It's just a slider toolbar. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go over the main toolbar within Fugro Access. So if you go over here all the way to the right-hand side, it's called Project Data Pull Down, and you can view everything by Flightline, tile, missions, and blocks. So Flightline, what that does is opens up we call them data panels. So it's going to give you all the information associated with each flight line and display the status. So you can filter it. If there's a particular block ID, if you got say blocks A, B, C, D, however they're numbered, you can filter them each block for the flight lines that are within that block. You've also got line status. So if I only want to see everything that's been collected, I can just use the pull-down menu, and it's going to update my table and just show me the lines that are collected. Now, the nice thing about this too is I can also filter and just show the lines that I want selected. So I can turn all lines on here with the selection box here. I can turn them all off, and it'll highlight them in yellow. And then there's various information about when we collect, we go and fly it, we call it a mission. So every time we go up and take to the skies and collect imagery, that's a single mission. And there's information associated with that mission, which will provide you with the mission ID, or mainly you're probably most concerned about the date it was flown. And you can just turn that on and off by clicking on and off that info button. There's a number of other options where you can filter by date flown. Again, you can display everything. You can show everything that's flown before a certain date. Just turn that on, and that'll redirect what's presented in the table. You can show flown on date, flown after. We don't have too many records loaded in this demo project, but for the Virginia project, you'll see a number of other flight dates listed in there. Again, it'll all be broken down by image resolution. Just to go back to the top of this menu here, we've got some other options, where you can, refresh the table. You can turn on line labels. So if you want to get an idea of what the line number is, you can just turn that on as well, and it'll display. If you can see that hand, just turn this legend off. So you've got the line numbers right there. You can turn, again, it's just toggle on, toggle off. You just click it on, click it off by clicking the tool itself. If you want to select features, you could select a particular flight line and then zoom right to that selected flight line. It'll take you right to it. Another nice feature, if people like using Google Earth, you can take and download a KML of just the selected lines or of all the flight lines. So I'll just do a quick show you how that works. It'll just download it locally. And then I'm using Internet Explorer here. You can use Chrome, Firefox. This tool has been written using JavaScript, so you actually could bring it up on your iPad as well and do it that way. It can be used on a mobile device. And so you'll see that I just brought in all the flight lines into Google Earth. And then that exports all the status that's associated with each feature as well. Basically, that's everything we have with the flight lines. I can do the same for tiles. My real estate screen here, there's a lot of information associated with the tiles, but you can see all the information. Basically what Wendy just went over in the PowerPoint. There's different statuses that we show for each tile. I'm going to turn on the legend here, so let me just turn off the flight lines. Keep the tiles on. So now what we're showing here is just, this will be the tiles again, organized by image resolution. There's a various stats for each tile letting you know what stage of the project or what status it's currently. So again, if we haven't started it, it'll show up as gray. If it's in production, meaning we're starting to work on that ortho, it'll show up in blue. Finishing is orange. It's going through our internal QC process. It'll be this green color, and then this fluorescent green color is when it's ready for review. It's basically product up on Fugro Access, and it can be reviewed by anybody who has been identified as a QC reviewer. And again, I can export all that information direct to Google Earth if I want to look at it in Google Earth. And just the various filtering options that we have up here. Again, I can filter it by block. I can filter it by production progress status. I can filter it by acceptance status. So anything basically that can help you organize the data, we've tried to program that into the application. And then there's another option here for missions. Again, I don't know how interested you'd be looking at that, but we do present this information as well, where basically, again, each time we take to the air, we call it a mission or a lift. We give you various information about each lift. Basically just the date flown. Again, if you have other credentials, you may be able to see additional information there as well. So I didn't have my flight lines on, but I could, if I want to say for a particular day, how many lines have been flown on March 14th, I can just click on this button here, and it'll highlight lines in yellow to show me what's been flown on a particular day. And then the last option here is blocks. So these are basically if we're delivering a project according to a particular production block. You'll see the blocks here. We've got, for this demo project, we've got a half dozen blocks here, all named A through H. I can display that information in a table. And you'll have two options here. Either it's called a production block or a delivery block. Not all projects contain production blocks, but this one, there's two tabs. You can production block or delivery block. And again, you can go in and zoom to that particular block by clicking on this green magnifying glass and take you right to it if you want to review the information in that manner. That's the main functionality for project status. What I'm going to show you now is, for this particular project, we didn't have the raw imagery loaded up. So I have another project. I'm just going to go back out to my home page and show you what a raw image sample will look like. Again, I'm going to select the raw imagery sample. And for the Virginia project, you'll have two options here at the bottom. There'll be one that says streets, which is our default base layer here, and then there's a raw imagery button that I can click on. And what that does, that loads in the image strips that Wendy spoke about during her PowerPoint. Again, this is right off the aircraft. It has not been color balanced. It's just a single strip image, and you can get a look at what the imagery looks like coming off the sensor. This is subsample, so we're presenting a 5-meter image. So don't get concerned if you zoom in here and you can't see much. It's not at full resolution, nowhere near. But again, it's just to give you an idea that your area has been flown, and you can get just a general sense of what the imagery looks like or what it was when it was collected. You know, there could be shadows in here. This imagery could most likely, some of it would get rejected and reflown. But again, it goes through our internal QC process, so we identified that as quickly as possible and put it back in for reflight if it fails our internal QC. So don't get too concerned about what you see in the raw imagery view. I'm just going to go back to the main project. So anytime you want to get back to that home page, you see that you have your user login name here, right? Depending on if it's the logins by username, or this one's called Virginia Commonwealth. You have a quick menu here that you can get a look at the home page. Your profile, this is pretty simple. It just lists some information about your email. If you want to change your password, you can do that here as well. And then we also actually have a help menu. So if you click on that, we'll provide a link to this as well. But this will show you all the functionality that's present within Fugro Access. It wants to load here. Big document. But we'll provide a link to that. And again, that document's on there right now. It goes over all the functionality for Fugro Access. Again, it goes over functionality that you may not have access to with your login. We are going to put up a simplified, we'll call it a quick start guide, so you can get started quickly with any, refer to that if you have a question. It basically would be geared towards a user like an online QC user, not maybe an internal project manager at Fugro that has additional access to functionality within the application. So back to my main demo project, I'm just going to show you the online QC tool. And what this is it's going to basically show you finished Ortho product. I'll just take it a second to load. May have timed out here. I think we might be showing the online QC portion in the next phase. For some reason, I'm not sure if it's related to WebEx or what, but the page is not coming up. We're going to check it on an offline application here and make sure it's up and running, but something with WebEx may be blocking it, so I apologize for that. And Wendy, I don't know if you want to go back to your PowerPoint.
Okay, I can show them the links while you check that out, Mike, and if you get it back up, we'll go back to it.
Okay, yep. Let me give you the back to you. There you go, Wendy. You should have access now.
Okay, all right. So let me see if I can. I'm not sure if I'm sharing my screen right now. Let me check on that. Okay, what I'm showing here is the web addresses to the two tools access information that Mike just shared with you. The portal, this is the link to the portal, and I think Mike mentioned earlier that we'll provide you as our users a login and password information. If you're interested in jumping in and working on this really soon, obviously I'm sure some of the 2017 flight areas will be interested in getting involved sooner than later. Please email me, and I will be glad to share with you a password and login information. It may be that we develop a fairly generic one, but we are considering whether we're going to do, a basic login that we share with multiple people or a user specified login. And I think we're probably going with the user specified login. So this is the link here. If you want to jot that down to access the portal, you'll get your username and password through me. And then another feature that Mike mentioned is the user manual. And I have the user manual already pulled up, so this is the link to that. So I can leave this up for a few minutes to let everybody have a chance to jot that down or save that information. You might take a screenshot of this page so you have both of these links available to you. Give you a moment to do that. And then I'll take a look and show you the user manual that will help you. So if you don't remember everything that Mike went over today, or you want to get further along than what we went through at this point, you'll have that available to you to help you out on your own as well. And never feel like you can't email or call me or Mike to get additional assistance. If you get into Fugro Access and you get stuck, we're going to be using it daily, so we'll be available to assist and help with any technical issues that you might have. I'm going to minimize this for a second and jump down here to show you the user guide. There we go. This is brand new, hot off the press, February the 6th, so just a couple of days ago the final copy came through, and this is very comprehensive. It gives you detailed information on all of the applications that you can do through Fugro Access, complete with screenshots and information on all of the different drop-down boxes and menus and available features that are part of the process. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but I'm just kind of scrolling through so you can take a look and see what's available through this. So be sure to take the time to download this, and I think too many pages of it. Well, it's not developed in that way, but it's a very comprehensive document, and it's got a lot of information. Very good resource that you can utilize. 85 pages, I believe. So that is available to you. I'll go back to the information about that. And Mike, were you able to get that to work, or should we just conclude?
Once if there's any questions, or you may want to, we can conclude now. There's still it's something might be with the WebEx, but we're looking into it. what's going on.
But well, I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll plan to revisit this once the data is processed and we get to the point where users can actually go in and make QC comments and edit calls. At this point, Mike covered everything that you'll have an interest in doing in the next couple months. So I want to thank everybody for participating and opening up to any questions that any of the participants might have about what we shared with you today. Let's see if I can take a look. If you want to raise your hand if you have a question, and we can look at it that way. Do we have any questions?
Is there any questions for Wendy or for Mike? If not, again, this is Steve Marzoff. As Wendy said, we want to thank you for taking the time to participate. We are excited about this project. This is the 5th acquisition that we're doing. Remember that this time we're doing it in thirds rather than half. So it's the eastern third, then the middle third, then the western third over the next 3 years. So if some of you, I see several folks that are on the WebEx that are from the western part of the state, you may not have anything to look at for a couple of years, and we'll repeat this each time we go into an acquisition cycle, so you won't have to remember all this. We'll make sure that we repeat this plenty of times so that you can do it. Plus, we will put a recording of this up on our website, so if you missed part of it, came late, and you wanted to hear the rest of it or review it later, you can do that. And as Wendy said, we'll do another one specific on how to look at the finished data for the QA/Q process once we get a little closer to that QA/QC time. Are there any final questions before we wrap up for the day? If not, thank you all and for participating. And if you have ideas for the webinar Wednesdays of things that you'd like to see, whether it's a vendor presentation or whether it's a specific topic, please let myself know, or Melissa Parsons, our regional coordinator from Region 6, the Roanoke area, Salem area. Please, she coordinates these for us and schedules them. So we want these to be valuable for you and to provide the information that help you do your job better. So whatever that takes, whether it's budgeting or even to how to do a webinar like this, we're happy to put together content that is meaningful to you and will help you do your job. So if there's no last questions, thank you all for participating. We'll be announcing future webinar Wednesdays in the coming couple weeks. Thank you.